Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate with host Glenn Sutherland.
Welcome to another episode of A Canadian Investing in the U.S. This week, my guest is Marc Ramsay. I've been looking forward to this one, this episode. Everything warm at this time of year is really appealing. So Marc, give everyone a little bit of an intro to yourself, maybe a little bit of your story, and then we'll jump into some talk on Costa Rica.
Sure, sounds great. My name is Marc Ramsay. I was originally born and raised in Vancouver, BC, Canada, and been doing IT work actually for 30 years. And about 10 years ago, I got into real estate investing in the US. I did some fix and flips down in Florida to start off, and then got into multifamily in Cleveland, Ohio, and Akron, Ohio shortly after that. And that's been my main focus for probably the last 9 years, has been the multifamily side of things. Sold pretty much everything except for one 76 unit complex currently in Cleveland, which we still own and operate, and it's cash flowing nicely. I specialized in distressed properties. So we had this one here was a almost not occupied with 2 derelict buildings out of 5, and we've now gone from 30% occupancy on 3 buildings to 100% occupancy on 5 buildings. And so that's kind of my major success story with real estate. A couple of years ago, I started looking overseas, because I decided I didn't really want to be in the US market as much anymore. And I was looking for an exit out of Canada. So I started doing some research on international markets and was looking at Costa Rica, Mexico, Portugal, Spain, Italy, just a bunch of different markets. Belize was a big one for me as well. Mm-hmm. And after a conference down here in Costa Rica 3 years ago, and the couple of trips down here, my wife and I decided that 2 things. One is we're going to move down here, and the second thing was I really like the real estate market down here. So kind of dove in and bought some land to build on, and after that, it's just kind of gone off the rails from there.
So you're down in Costa Rica doing real estate now. What is your real estate? Are you doing, because you said you bought some land, so is it development, or are you just buying some things? Are you doing Airbnb? What's the thing to do?
So we've had several things on the go down here, and it wasn't just Costa Rica, it was Mexico as well. So we've got a couple of things going on there. But in Costa Rica, we bought a couple of pieces of property here side by side to make one large lot to build a house on, with the eventual idea that it would be a luxury rental when we decided to start traveling. And then a little while after that, got a really good deal on a piece of land in an area called Playa Flamingo up in Guanacaste. And it is kind of the Beverly Hills of Costa Rica. There's some really high-end luxury houses and condos and stuff in the area. One of the most beautiful beaches in Costa Rica, Playa Flamingo. The Palms Resort is right on Playa Flamingo. There's Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville. One of his Margaritavilles is right on Playa Flamingo Beach as well. And it backs up against another major beach called Playa Potrero, which has got a new marina going in right now, which is I think there's only 4 or 5 marinas all up and down the west coast of Costa Rica. And so it's a big deal for the tourism side. So we looked at this property and decided that the price was right and we could get 16 condos onto it. So with working with a local architect, it's actually a Canadian architect based out of Calgary, but he's been down here for 18 years now. And we're designing a 16-unit luxury condo development on this chunk of land, and it's got 270-degree views, oceans, Playa Potrero, Playa Flamingo. It's just, it's going to be really, really beautiful when it's done. So we're in the middle of that design. We're in the middle of the design process right now. We've gotten through the environmental process. We're waiting on our water concession, and we're just finishing up the initial drawings and renderings for the floor plans, and then we can get into actual construction drawings and so forth as well.
Awesome. Is any of that process different than if you were doing it in the US or Canada?
Yeah, it is. There's different things to be aware of down here. The 2 biggest things down here, the first one is title. There's you can get some weird things going on with title down here. And I know of some cases down here where someone was trying to buy into some property. There was issues with the title going back 20 years, and it takes them 5 or 6 years or even longer to sort out all the title issues before they can actually do something. So title's a big thing down here. Most of the time, it's free and clear, and it's the kind of title where you own it, and nobody can take it away from you, which is great. But you also have things down here called concession titles. Anything within 250 meters of the high tide mark is concession, and in most cases, you can't build on it unless you're grandfathered in on it, basically. A good example of that is we just signed an offer on a 1-bedroom condo with a rooftop terrace, 75 feet from the beach, ocean views, beautiful. And it's on concession land. So every 20 years, the concession has to be renewed. It's just paperwork. It's considered very safe, but they're not making any more concession land down here. You can't build within a certain distance of the beach anymore unless there's already construction there, and they've got a permit. So
can you get insurance for that? Sorry.
Oh yeah. Well, you can insure it. I mean, it's all okay. It's like freehold title, basically.
Yeah.
But just the government says they just don't let you own it. You have a concession to it. So but in effect, because a concession you submit the paperwork every 20 years, you get a renewal. The one we're buying, actually, the concession runs out in 2023. So they're starting the paperwork to make sure that concession gets renewed.
I understand now. I was thinking it was more like a flood zone sort of issue. No, it's because the government. It's kind of like the native land and stuff where you have to rent and sort of things. Yeah, you don't actually own it. Okay, gotcha.
Yes. So and it's like Mexico within 50 kilometers of the ocean or 100K of an international border. A foreigner can't actually own land there, but they can own land through a bank trust. So it's kind of the same type of thing, right? So the second most important thing in Costa Rica is water concessions. So the government got fed up with a lot of the water issues going on, especially in the tourist areas like Guanacaste, and they took over all of the water rights in the country, and everyone had to go through a process to get permits and concessions for their water, even if they'd had them forever. In a lot of cases, people who are on city water, it's not a big deal because it's city water. But if you had a well, or you're pulling water out of a stream or whatever, stuff like that, you then had to go through and get the concessions. So you cannot get a building permit in Costa Rica without a water concession, with a water concession letter, and that concession letter tells to you what you can build. It'll say, yeah, you have water for a 3-bedroom house. For instance, our project right now, we want to put 16 units in. We only have a water concession letter for 10. So we're in the process of getting them to bump that up to 16. And we can't pull a permit until we have that water letter saying we can build 16 units on the property. Those are two of the biggest things. Everything else comes down to, is there utilities on the property? Is the land titled properly? A lot of the usual stuff you see. Yeah. But as I said, most issues you see down here are to deal with title or water issues. So,
to go back to your condos, like, what's the plan with those? Are you going to rent them out as like an Airbnb, or are you going to sell each condo unit off? Or
it's myself and 2 Canadian partners, and we're going to be pre-selling 10 units and keeping 6 if all our budgeting works out correctly. So in the end, between the 3 partners, we'll have 6 units to rent out as Airbnb or use when we want to use it, and the other 10 will be owned by the new owners. So
okay, cool. And whenever I did a little research on Costa Rica, because I was down there a couple of years ago and loved it, and from my understanding, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they introduced a short-term rental tax or something like a year ago or a year and a half ago.
Yeah, there's a 13% rental tax down here now on short-term rentals, and there's even a tax on long-term rentals over a certain dollar value as well. I think it's $1,200 if it's over $1,200 a month or something like that.
Yeah,
I have to look it up. But yeah, but the nice thing is when you do Airbnb and stuff like that, you still post your nightly rate plus taxes and fees, right? And Airbnb knows about the 13%. It automatically pulls it out when someone makes a payment, so they remit the tax for you. It's no different than the hotel taxes if you go to Maui or any place else. It's just it's like a VAT tax in Europe. So the only difference is now is Airbnb, the government forced Airbnb to also do withholding tax on income as well. And so they do a kind of withholding tax on the income, and then you have to file your returns and all that kind of stuff at the end of the year, and hopefully get some back if all works out well. But the other thing down here with paperwork too is they use an electronic receipt system down here, and basically if your receipts aren't electronic and they aren't submitted within a certain amount of time of them being issued, quite often you can't claim them on your taxes. So it really helps having a good accountant down here to manage all that stuff for you, so you do get all the deductions you want to get. Because not like Canada and the US where you can just kind of put everything in a shoebox till the end of the year. Down here you got to stay on top of it almost on a weekly basis pretty much, and make sure everything's submitted when it's supposed to be.
That's interesting. And I wasn't even thinking about going down the tax route at all. So, so I'm guessing you have your taxes going on all the time. You get all your American taxes done first and your Costa Rica taxes done first, probably at the same time. And then your Canadian accountant does everything at the end, I'm guessing. I don't know anything.
I'm in the position where my US stuff is only for the corporate side of things. I don't have I will have a personal return in the US this year, but up until now I haven't had one.
Okay.
It's always been corporate returns.
Gotcha.
In Canada, I am no longer a resident of Canada for taxation purposes. So all the investing, I've tried to push all my investing until I moved down here. And so now I'm doing all my investing. So because I did it all after I left Canada and became a non-resident, I don't have to file any taxes on any of this. This is what I'm doing down here in Costa Rica right now. Now, money, for instance, income coming in from my IT, because I still do some IT work. So I don't pay any taxes on that. The taxes I get from my property in the US, I pay the taxes on the US side, as withholding taxes and stuff on that side, but then the rest comes straight to me. Mexico deducts, just like Costa Rica does, they deduct their income tax right off the rental amounts, and then the balance just goes into my bank account. And Costa Rica is the same thing. Down here, if money's earned in Costa Rica, then I have to file a return in Costa Rica. So I will have to file an income return down here for that income.
Okay. When I was down there, I was vacationing. Is the cost of living, how is it compared to Canada or the US?
That's a huge depends. As you know, Toronto and Vancouver are just outrageous. I mean, it's one of the reasons I left Vancouver after being there most of my life. It's just I got tired of working just to live in Vancouver. And down here, if you're going to live up in the big tourist zones like the Guanacaste region, you want to live in Playa Flamingo, you want to live in Tamarindo, you want to live in you want to live in San Jose, some of the bigger touristy areas. It can get more expensive, and over the last year, because of COVID, rents have gone through the roof. Some stuff has doubled in places rent-wise, so it has gotten expensive. That said, if you want to live locally and simply, it can be quite inexpensive. We live in a small gated community. We're up on the side of a mountain, so I mean, to go anywhere we have to drive. We're paying $1,200 US a month for our rent, which is a little more than half of what I paid for a crappy little townhouse in Port Moody, BC. And we buy our food at the local markets wherever possible, all the fresh fruit, vegetables, local meats, dairy, all that stuff. We don't buy all the prepackaged American foods because they're expensive. You might buy a bottle of hot sauce or something, but I'm not out buying boxes of Cheerios and stuff like that. So if you eat locally and you live locally and you're not renting or buying the big house on the side of a mountain with a great view, even with my daughter's tuition down here, we're living for probably around just over $2,000 US a month, $2,000 to $2,500 depending on expenses that month.
Cool.
And then the only
Go ahead. Continue.
I was gonna say the only thing on top of that is medical insurance, because until you become a resident down here, you're not on the medical system, so you have to pay for medical coverage, just like travel medical, but it's long term, and that can get pricey. I think ours is upwards of $500 a month for the medical side of things. So,
how difficult is it to become a resident?
It depends on what kind of a resident you want. If you're retirement age and you have a guaranteed income from your RSPs or a company pension or something like that, it's really easy to apply for a pensionado. I do the investor's visa, and they drop the requirements on that. You only have to invest think it's $150,000 in the country, and that's pretty easy to spend on you can spend it on a house, a piece of property, couple properties, whatever. As long as you're investing in the country, you can get an investor's visa. Then there's also another type of visa, which you basically just have to put $60,000 US in a Costa Rican bank account. And I think you're allowed to pull out $2,500 a month, and it's good for 2 years. And that's another way to do it. But the problem is it's a long process. There's a whole bunch of paperwork you do. We did all our paperwork before we came down. We submitted it all. We came down here. The lawyer then submitted it all to immigration. That was last January. We still haven't gotten word yet. I expect to hear back somewhere between January and July next year, whether we've got our residency or not. So.
And you mentioned like when as soon as you said like, oh yeah, you can buy a house and you hit your 150,000. Can you get mortgages there?
As a resident, you can get a mortgage here.
Okay.
And that's not a problem. But they're expensive. You're probably talking 7, 8, 9% interest, which also means that if you dump money in a bank account down here and have it sit there, you're probably also going to get 4 to 5% interest.
Ooh, that's not bad. Well, it's better than in Canada anyway. It's still it's better to invest it. Yeah.
It is better to invest it, but yeah, you actually do make money on interest here still, but you also pay it when you need to borrow. So
cool. I think this is my last question, at least what I have written down. It's beautiful there. Besides the beautifulness and the weather and everything, what's the advantage of going or disadvantage of going and investing in Costa Rica over, I don't know, Florida or Arizona or because you said you were looking at Spain and all kinds of places. Why Costa Rica?
Well, Costa Rica is just one of the places I'm investing. Like I said, I invest in Costa Rica, Mexico. I got a Bali project. We're looking at Portugal right now as well. But I like Costa Rica because it's still technically North America. It's an easy flight anywhere I want to go. It's a very stable country politically. The legal system here is very stable. I can't remember what they call it. There's 2 types of law. Canada, US use one, but Costa Rica uses another. And it's basically everything is black and white. There is no gray areas in the law down here. So, for instance, if something's not in a contract, then it's not in the contract, right? Things like that. So, but I mean, it's of most of the Central American countries. Belize and Costa Rica, I think, are probably 2 of the most stable politically down here. Mexico's probably a close third, in my opinion. So between political stability, the dollar value, the exchange rate to the U.S. dollar here is it's been stable for as long as I can remember. Just the whole lifestyle thing down here as well. There's just a lot of reasons that Costa Rica was our preferred place to live and invest. So.
Yeah, and I just way off topic, but it just reminded me when I was down there, there's like 2 currencies too, and one of them is basically U.S. currency, like par, right? Is that right?
They have the colone,
yeah,
and it's about 600 colone to the U.S. dollar, and that's been pretty stable, or about 500 colone to the Canadian dollar, give or take, depending on where the dollar is sitting these days.
Okay.
So if you're in tourist areas, most places will take U.S. dollars. They'll give you a restaurant bill, and it'll have the colone and the U.S. dollar on it. You can pay either or. Okay. And if you give them your U.S. or Canadian credit card, especially U.S. card, they'll run the sale through in U.S. dollars on your American, say, credit card.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's nice. And you mentioned Belize a couple of times. I know that's an English-speaking country, and I know Costa Rica is a Spanish country.
Very much.
Is that been a barrier anywhere with like lawyers or any of this stuff you're doing, architects?
Well, you tend to seek out what's easier sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
And for instance, my primary architect down here is a Canadian, so who's been down here for, as I said, 16, 18 years, 18 years, I think now. So yeah, it's pretty easy dealing with him. Most of the lawyers I know have all had some legal training outside of Costa Rica, and it's usually in an English-speaking university. So all the lawyers I've had to deal with for various transactions and stuff, they've all spoken very good English. I also have a couple accountants I deal with, and their English is extremely good. So when even our dentist speaks really good English. So when you start dealing with some of the professions, especially ones where they might have gone out of the country to get their degrees or to do some studying, English is generally very good. And if you're in the really touristy areas like San Jose and Guanacaste, like Tamarindo and Playa Flamingo and Playa Coco and stuff like that, there is a lot of English because that's where a lot of the tourists go. But as soon as you get into the less touristy areas, then you really do have to have a little bit of Spanish with you to get by sometimes, because a lot of the people just they never had the opportunity to learn English, so they don't.
Right.
So we're kind of half and half down here. Because of me running basically 2 careers up until now, I've been pretty focused on that, and I haven't had a chance to focus on learning Spanish. It comes to what you call a bandwidth problem. Your brain only has so much bandwidth, so you kind of you focus on what's important at the time. But my wife has been learning Spanish for a few years now, and she's doing exceptionally well down here. So when it comes to dealing with, when we have to deal with something in Spanish, she's been doing really, really well with it. So that's been a huge advantage for us. So it certainly helps here. Belize, on the other hand, like you said, it is the national language because it used to be a British colony. So it's if you're really worried about the language issues, Belize can be a really good place to go. But you're not going to have the same educational. If we have a daughter here with us, and so we are also looking for a place that had a good educational opportunity for her. And so there's a good bilingual school here, and it's not far from us, so it's easy to get her to and from school. Whereas in Belize, it would have been a lot harder for us to find a school for her that would have had the educational opportunities that we wanted. So that was another contributing factor to where we decided to move to.
Right. Well, Mark, you got me thinking about these tour the distance ones again. Every time I have one of these on where it's like anything besides Canada, the US, I'm like, but yeah, no, that sounds really awesome. If people wanted to get a hold of you, is there a way to do so? Do you want people to contact you?
Yeah, that's fine. I have my email address, which I'll give to you, and you can attach it to the video or or somehow on your YouTube channel. So that's fine. That's probably the best way to get in touch with me at this point. I'm always on email. So and you'll find that when you're down this way too, WhatsApp is huge. Everybody uses WhatsApp for communication. So it's kind of I've even got most of my friends back home to get on it, so they can call me anytime. So it's really useful.
I've been converted to it too. I use it for everything, contractors, everything. Just keep it all organized. Yeah,
it's great. Love it. So
awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming on the show so much, Mark. I don't know. I love Costa Rica. It was a warm place. I'll have to get down there again soon.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Love living down here. I mean, anytime we're 3.5 hours from San Jose, so when I do have to fly out, it's a bit of a pain because you got to get all the way up to San Jose, catch a flight. Quite often you have to go up there the day before. I mean, there are some. It's not a very big country, but it does take a long time to get anywhere. For instance, our project up in Playa Flamingo, that's a 6-hour drive for me. So when I do have to start going up there on a regular basis, it'll be for several days at a time. Because whereas in the U.S. that would have been a 3-hour drive, maybe, right? So it's just you got to take all that into account. I mean, it's still a small country. There's not that many major roads places, so everybody, of course, is on those major roads to get around the country, and it can be fun, So it doesn't have the same type of infrastructure as Canada or the US, and when things break down, it takes a little bit longer. So
it's okay.
Power, internet. I mean, you got to understand that some days the power's out right now. All right, I guess I'm going to do something else for a little bit, and comes back on a couple hours later, and away you go again. So not quite the same as Canada.
No, not quite. Thanks for coming on the show, Mark. I really appreciate it.
No problem, Glenn. Take care, and great talking to you.
Same.